In this video, I'm going to provide an overview of the business impact analysis object within the BCM solution in OpenPages. So I'll go over the fields, how the workflow works, and the functionality that exists with that new object. So here I've logged into OpenPages. You can see I'm on the dashboard. If I go to my menu in business continuity or business impact analysis, you can see that I'm on the grid view. And if I click add new, this is how I can add a new BIA. When I add a new BIA, a name is automatically generated. You can use this as is. You can add additions to it, or you could create your own name as needed. It's a way of ensuring that we have unique names for all the BIAs within OpenPages. We also have a description field where you could add a summary of the functionality that's being reviewed. And we have related objects down below here where you can map this business impact analysis to other records within OpenPages. So in this example that I'm going to provide in this video, I'm going to link this BIA to a payroll process. I'm going to select this one here. You can select multiple processes if you need to. And then I'm going to hit save. Now while I hit save, workflow is being generated for this record, and as part of that workflow, the workflow sets the draft to, or the status to draft, and it creates the author. So I'm logged in as this user, so it's assigning this user as the author. You can modify those operations of the workflow as needed. There's another video that addresses the workflow designer, but this is all configurable to fit your needs. Also, the views are configurable. So for instance, in line of business, as I'm writing internal here, if this would serve better as a drop-down, you can make this a drop-down field instead of a free text field. Same thing with department. So I put in my line of business, I put in my department. For requirements or obligations, this field is designed to allow you to list any contractual or legal obligations that would occur if the process or function was disrupted. So we might have employment contracts, labor law, potential violations. Then operating procedures is used for identifying what the procedure is in a normal operating capacity without any sort of disruption. So that's an ideal situation how the procedure would work. Then your peak operating period is those instances when there's more activity than usual for the function. So if we're dealing with a bi-monthly payroll, we might have more activity on toward the beginning and end, or beginning and middle of the month. Recovery time objective is the acceptable downtime before all functionality could be restored after a disruptive event. So here I'm just going to put 1, and then recovery point objective would be the point in time when the functionality could be recovered from the disruptive event. So I'm just going to put 1 there as well. We also have an ability to add a user as a participant to this record. So they might be someone that needs to be aware of actions being taken on the record, but maybe they're not involved in the actual workflow. And then we have a comment section here. So I'm just going to put comments, but that's where you could add additional comments on the processing of the BIA. Before I get into any of the other fields, I'm going to go down here and show the associations that can be made to this record. So here you can see we made that association of payroll processing. If I click on this sidebar icon, you can see all the information from this record in the sidebar. So here you can see any risks that have been identified related to this process. You can identify any controls related to this process. So it's a way in which you can have all this information available in an easy to find manner. If you click on that title, you'll be taken to a full screen view of the record too. So we're going to have our payroll process involved here. If during the BIA you identify any issues, you can add an issue. It'll go through the issue management process. We're going to go over to resources, We're going to say that this data center is involved in this function, and we're also going to select a vendor, say that this vendor, maybe they are a necessary party to this function as well. And then same instance where you can identify additional information on this record by clicking the sidebar panel. So I'm going to save this. You can also add attachments. So if you have any documents that you have on your desktop, and you want to add that to the record, you can add that here, and it will show up as an attachment. So here, now that we've added these new relationships, they will display in the tree view. And then this is a useful tool for identifying potential overlap with other BIAs that might be impacted. So in this instance, we have another BIA that references this vendor. So we can look through that BIA, determine if there's any sort of overlap there, which could be useful information to know. Same thing with process. We can identify the process, any risks. So you can get the risks, you can get the controls related to that risk. You can open up all of these records here. And another instance where we have overlap with other BIAs. And same thing with resource. So that's one way of being able to see how all the information maps together. So now, after getting that information, I'm going to go and fill out some other information. So we have an owner field. I'm going to make it myself. And then we have a reviewer. I'm going to choose BIA reviewer and approver. So in this workflow, we require there to be different users for author, reviewer, and approver. And then now when I get to the actual assessment or determination of criticality, in this instance, we have a calculation that we're running based on the fields that we select here. So if I select that there's a requirement, a contract or regulatory requirement, there's a financial impact, and there's a reputational impact, you can see that we'll get an impact score that generates from these selections, as well as an maximum acceptable outage. So to show how that works, if I go to my calculation, here's our calculation that's being run for those selections. Here you can see we have an impact score that we're creating based on, we have numeric values assigned to the selections made on that screen. So if it was a contractual requirement, a legal requirement, it's yes, it's a 5. If it's no, it's a 0. Financial impact, if it's high, it's 5, medium 3, low 1, and then if there's no selection, it's 0. And same thing with the other field. And then it creates the score by adding those together. That determines what the tier is, the impact tier, and the impact tier determines the maximum acceptable outage. So this can all be modified as needed by the client, but that's kind of an overview of how these selections are deriving these fields here. And then we also have impact categories, so you can determine if it would lead, if a disruption of this function would lead to any sort of reputation or legal risk. So as the author, I've filled out all of my information. I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to submit for review. And so this is going to process it to the next stage of the workflow. So you can see now, as the author, I don't have access to this record to move it to the next stage. So if I log out, log in as BIA approver, I guess reviewers next. So I'm logged in, and on my dashboard here you can see I have a task listed here, and there's my task. If I click on that, it'll take me to the record that we were just on. You can see all the information that was already populated. And from here, if I make any changes, so let's say I say financial impact is actually going to be medium, and reputational impact is going to be high if we don't pay our employees when we say we will. So now you can see there's been changes to the tier and the maximum acceptable outage. So if I go to activity, this is our audit log of all the changes made to that record. So here you can see I changed the value from 11 to 13, changed the impact, the score, and who made the change. So I can make those changes, and I could, I have access to the same information as previously, and I can either submit that for approval to go to the BIA approver, or I can send it back to a draft, in which case the author is going to have to make changes. So I'm going to submit that for approval. I'm going to add a comment, change key fields, I'll continue, and you can see here when I do that, a comment's added under the comment field, and with who made the comment and the comment right here. So that just gets added to the comment field each time. And you can see now I again don't have that access to moving it to the next stage. So I'll log in now as the approver. And same thing, I'm going to go on the dashboard. You can see I have a task here, it's listed there. I can also access it here. So I'm going to access that. You can see the comments. I can add additional comments, make changes as I need to, but I'm going to approve this. And in this workflow, the approver has to make a comment. So I make my comment, I close it, and now my task is completed. So now if I go back to my business impact analysis grid screen, you can see all the different BIAs that are available. It has a sorting feature, so I can sort. Here's the one that I just completed. You can also filter for information, so you could filter by if the process is related to a certain business entity, then you can get that business entity appearing there, as well as you can filter for any fields that appear on the record. The other thing is that from here you can export the records on the grid screen into an Excel spreadsheet, which will show up right here, and then you can have access to all the information that you have on those records. So that is an overview of the business impact analysis object. Thank you for your time.